Wrexham Export Lager.
And remember, life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. Firstly, bit of a change of scenery. It's a little bit more echoey in here now. Had a new floor put in, got rid of the carpet, got a solid floor in there, solid wood floor in there now, and it's much better, much more spacious. I've moved the fridge out over into the corner, got my desk here. All my other shit that used to be behind me is over there now. I've got my Blood for Blood flag in the back, or at the back. That's the door, and this is me sitting here. Right, been an eventful few weeks. Firstly, as I say, we had the whole house done upstairs, so that's why all the videos that you've seen and been put up recently, apart from the Sepultura cover that I did the other day, they were all in my archive. So they're oldish videos filmed in January, sometimes even before that as well. And there's quite a lot of them videos still to go, so you may see the scenery chopping and changing. That's why. Also on the horizon, health check. I got a yellow card off the doc. He said my blood pressure's high, and I fucking knew it was anyway. I'm on medication for it anyway. But the old beer, I was caning the beer too much, and he said, you've got to pack it in. And I said, what do you mean by pack it in? And he said, well, how many units are you drinking? And I said, mate, you're talking fucking Chinese to me when you talk about units. Ask me about pints and I might give you an idea. So then he started waffling on about, alcoholic units. If you're drinking a strong lager, it's 2 units. And to be honest, I said, look, mate, I drink too much. That's all you need to fucking know. He said, well, you've got to cut down. So I have more or less cut out drinking during the week. Well, I'm trying to do it now anyway. The odd day, if I have a drink during the week, I had to go into the office the other day, first time in 3 years, down to London. And that got messy. Met up with a few mates I hadn't seen in person for 3 years, so we had a few beers and all that, and I was on the Guinness and it got a little bit messy. And the next day I had to put up a wardrobe, a bed, and that was not easy. Yeah, with an hangover. And and that's the first beer I'd had in about 2 weeks, so you can imagine how much that made me suffer. But yeah, I've had to cut out the beer during the week. I mean, it's not, I'm not giving up beer. I don't want to give up beer. I like drinking beer too much. I mean, if the doctor said to me, you have to, then I probably would. But he said, your liver's fine, which was really fucking surprising. He said, yeah, your liver's fine. I thought we'd got it mixed up. But apparently my kidneys are a bit moody, so I've got to go for a scan on them. I'm 50 years old, so, these things happen when you get old, and, if you cane the beer as much as I do, well, as I used to, I was drinking every night. It's getting crazy. I was drinking about 5 or 6 pints a night, and it was getting very, very nice indeed. And yeah, something got to give. And my health was, I knew it was bad anyway, but I'd wake up with hangovers, and yeah, they weren't good. I never missed work though. I'm not an alcoholic, put it that way. But yeah, I still went to work every day, and I was good. So anyway, enough about that fucking doom and gloom. Let's get on to this stuff. Has anything else happened? Not really. Haven't been up to much. Done a bit of recording down the studio. I've been working on getting, and it's quite good actually. When you don't drink during the week, I tend to focus me attention onto other things, and I've been brushing up on my recording skills and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not all doom and gloom. Anyway, you might be seeing a few more of me bass covers, because obviously if I'm not drinking during the week, I'm not going to be reviewing as much beer. So watch this space. There may be some more videos of me playing bass, but there will be more beer reviews. So don't think I'm giving up the beer reviews. I certainly am not, and I'm definitely not giving up the beer. Anyway, got that out of the way. Let's get on to this stuff. Now, this is the Wrexham Lager from the Wrexham Lager Brewery, which, would you believe, are based in Wrexham, which, for the uninitiated, is in Wales. And they are based in Wrexham city centre. Now, I didn't go down to Wrexham. I got this in Esters in Rochester. So they are selling this in the supermarkets, which is good, because this brewery has got quite an interesting history. Now, do you recall? Well, this is my quest for finding a decent English or even British lager. So I'm not going to compartmentalise it just to just English. It's going to be the United Kingdom. I've still yet to find one, which is really good. But this talks a good fight. Now, they can trace their lineage back to 1882, where 2 German immigrants came over and they settled in Wales. And they decided to start brewing beer. Now, they had a few misfortunes and all that, i.e. the climate wasn't cold enough, would you believe? So they spoke to a German who was over in Wales at the time, and he ran a chemical works and it specialised in refrigeration. So he got a share of the brewery and he lent them some fridges, and they started brewing lager. But the trouble was, all the ale brewers started getting a bit fucking jealous because a lot of people were drinking it. So they changed the recipe on their beers, and they basically upped their game, which I think is a good thing. But the worst thing was they undercut them on the price. So, of course, price is always going to win at the end of the day. Lager takes a long time to brew. There are more overheads when you brew lager because you have to store it for so long, so you need a bigger space to keep the beers or to keep the lager lagering, as it were. But they built a brewery in the old Bavarian style, and they were brewing in the Bavarian style as well. And they were doing quite well until, as I say, the ale brewers just started undercutting them, and people were buying the ale more than they were the lager. So they could see the writing on the wall, so they thought they've got to diversify. So what they did was they made friends with the local merchants who were exporting stuff to the far-flung corners of the British Empire. And they were actually the first ones to export lager into certain places in the British Empire, notably South Africa and India, would you believe? So lager did make it over there as well. So you could argue that this is the original India Pale Lager. If you wanted to call it that, I imagine you could, but they haven't done that, thankfully. It would probably send me into Hitler-esque fits of fucking rage. But it's, as I say, it's got quite a unique history. And there's a little tidbit of information that I found really interesting on researching this beer. Wrexham Lager was the only lager that was available on the Titanic on its maiden and only voyage in 1912. So there you go. Anyway, the company did flourish, but then, as I've always said, with the early lager styles in the UK, and they weren't the only ones who were brewing lager. There was lager brewers in Germany that had come over, and they'd settled in England as well, and they'd settled in London, and there was actually one in Tottenham, would you believe, that brewed lager, and there was some other lager brewers all over the country, notably Germans. But of course, and as I always say, I think this is what put the mockers on lager, in that the First World War and the Second World War, and they even mention it themselves, the anti-German propaganda put paid to lager making any inroads in the United Kingdom. So that more or less put paid to the Wrexham Brewery, but it was bought out by Eindhoven in 1949. Eindhoven and Allsop, I should say, that's what they were called. And it went through a load of changing hands, etc. Ended up with Carlsberg, Tetley, and then ended up in Carlsberg, UK. However, Carlsberg stopped this line of beer in 2002. They demolished the brewery that was in Wales, and they basically put paid to the brewery. However, this alarmed one Martin Jones, who was an MP, would you believe, for South Clwyd, which is in North Wales, and he bought the patent rights, as in the branding, basically, for £1 off of Carlsberg, which that was to basically keep the heritage of lager in Wales, or this company, which, as I say, they began since 1882. So he's done a pretty noble thing, and everyone's got an opinion on MPs and politicians, but I think that's a pretty noble thing that he did. And he employs the old head brewer that was brewing that as well. And now they're a very small brewery that are based in Wrexham. And they seem to be doing okay. Judging by the website, they actually had a new premises built by a company called Kasper Schulz, who are German, believe it or not, and they're from Bavaria, Bamberg, no less. And they've been they've been building breweries for over 300 years. So they know what they're doing when they build breweries. And they've built this brewery in Wrexham in the Bavarian style, or in the style of a Bavarian brewery. So that's good as well. Now, the downside is on the research of the ingredients, there is no brew sheet. So the next section is going to be pretty sparse, but let's do it anyway. Right, this is a 330ml bottle. This is 5%, and it just says based at the Wrexham Lager Beer Company, which is in 42 George's Crescent, Wrexham. Contains malted Pilsner barley. Okay, and that's about it. There's no brew sheet, unfortunately. I've looked on the website, and there is niche. Oh, this won a Gold Award, European Gold Challenge in 2020. What were they doing holding beer festivals in 2020? Oh, it must have been when they had that break during the lockdown. Now, this is brewed to an original recipe. I wonder, because that would be English hops, and if they say Pilsner malt, then it's Pilsner malt. But that's not a bad thing. I mean, malt is grown, the malt in the UK is grown in a maritime environment, and there is a German brewer, would you believe, Flensburger, who make big things about their malt being grown in a maritime environment, and they say it's very good. And I would concur with that, because the malt in the UK, particularly in Norfolk and Suffolk, where it's grown in abundance, that's quite nice beer that's brewed in that region. I must get hold of some of that Hawk's Head as well. That's the stuff Jeremy Clarkson is brewing, and apparently that's a really nice beer. It uses Mandarina Bavaria hops, so that, I imagine that's worth checking out. I'll try and get hold of some of that. I don't know whether you can get it in bottles or not, but we're not talking about that now. We're talking about this stuff, and that's about it really. That's all I can give you. There's not much in the way of ingredients, and yeah, that's it. So let's stop gassing and let's get it open. Right, as you may or may not know if you've watched my videos, I have a bit of a downer on lager that's brewed in the UK. I basically don't think we can do it, and I think it's because of the water. Now, a couple of kind subscribers have sort of agreed with me. There's the cap, by the way, in case you're interested. It's just a brass coloured cap. And one particularly astute subscriber, he said that the fact that they have to treat the tap water, because it is tap water, makes a big difference, because, as I say, I mean, I'm comparing it to Bavarian lager, but Bavarian lager uses spring water, usually from Artesian Wells, where the breweries are. So, yeah, that's going to make a big difference. Anyway, let's concentrate on this. What are we getting on the aroma? Very grainy and cereally. It's almost like a roasted note to it. And then there's that astringency that I get sometimes in English lagers, and it's kind of tastes almost macro. You'd never get this in a Bavarian lager. This type of aroma. It reminds me of the stuff that Warsteiner, I should say, if you want to pronounce it correctly. But it's got a very vague fruity ester on it, and it does make mention of that as well. It just says it's got fruity ester, and it's quite sweet, almost honey, but it's very vague. But there is this, it's almost like a nasty. You do get it in macro brewed lagers as well. Okay, the aromas are not filling me with confidence, but the proof is in the tasting, as I always say. So let's get this down my fat Gregory Peck. Bottoms up. bit weird. There's a definite sweetness on that, like a honey style sweetness, and I think if they're going for the Bavarian sweetness that you get in good Helleses that are brewed there, then particularly the Hofbrau and the Paulaner, I noticed that they have quite sweet esters that come off the yeast. Hacker-Shaw as well are renowned for that. Okay, let's go again. There's a fair amount of body on it, but it's not as light as them really good German Helles that you get, certainly from the Munich brewers, but also from the others that are based in Bavaria. This has an air of just, I wouldn't say cheap grain, but it reminds me of the grain that you get in Warsteiner, and it's almost toasted. I'm not going to say roasty toasty, so don't wait for me to say that, because I'm not, even though this is a Welsh beer. I know a little Welsh fellow who loves saying roasty toasty. I'm not saying that, but it has got a slightly toasted white bread note to it, but not in a good way, if you know what I mean. I will say it's quite full-bodied for a lager. It's got plenty of body, pretty smooth. There is a sweet ester to it. It's just okay. Again, I wouldn't be doing somersaults saying how great it is. It's not really that unpleasant, I have to say. I've definitely tasted worse, but it's not really going to bowl me over. And this was available in Asda, and I have to say, and this was a superstore at Asda's, the lager selection was pretty fucking grim, I have to say. It's just your macro brewed nonsense. They had a lot of that Brooklyn lager. It's mainly Carlsberg stuff, and I did think that this was still actually owned, or it was still owned by the Carlsberg Brewery, Carlsberg Marston's I should call them there, but they sold this off, and now they're, as far as I can tell, they're an independent brewer, so that's a good thing in my opinion. I mean, this isn't bad. I'd love to know what hops they've used in this. I think it's got quite an earthy note. That's what I'm trying to get across. If you can imagine toasted earth, that's what it's sort of giving off. And I don't know whether that's a mixture of English hops that have been used in here, but you do find that in, as I say, the North German stuff. So is it the malt that's grown in a maritime environment that's doing this? I don't know, but it's pretty run of the mill. I have to say, it doesn't look too bad. Nice tightly compact bubbles, quite nice lacing from the head. Quite refreshing, very full bodied, I will say that. Definitely got a body on it. I'd put it on a par with Warsteiner. Probably not as good. I had Warsteiner yesterday actually. But man, I'm saying I'm cutting down, we drinking. Look at me now, it's fucking 2 days on a trot. But this will be it for me tonight. And I had a couple of bottles of Warsteiner yesterday, and it's reminded me a lot of that. It's got that toasty note that you get from it, and that's the most dominant thing on here. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it compares to the Sam Smith's organic lager, which in my opinion is probably the best British lager that I've tasted. The C84 Yorkshire lager is also quite good as well. Is that something to do with the water? Who knows? It's take your pick, because there's other Yorkshire brewers who've done lager and it's not been that great, so who knows. But this is just okay. Drinkable. Instead of the usual grass, herbal and lemon citrus that you get on German Helleses, you're getting more of an earthy note, which is making me think this is something to do with the hops that they've used in. Now, I think it could be English hops, or it could be a
a hop that's got quite earthy tones to it, maybe a Fuggles hop or something like that. Certainly it doesn't have that noble hop character that you get in decent German beers, which is a shame really, but all in all, it's not a chuck down the sink job. If I had a 500ml bottle of that, then I would probably drink that as well, but yeah, I probably wouldn't buy that ever again. So what is the verdict on Wrexham Lager? Well, it's again falling into the trap of not being or not comparing with the Bavarian stuff, and I always do compare it to the Bavarian stuff because that's the best in the world, and if you're going to compare something, you've got to compare it with the best. Now, I can see that they've gone to quite a lot of effort to get their brewery built in a Bavarian style. Again, it says that their beers are inspired by the great Bavarian brewers and all that, but it just doesn't really compare, in my opinion. I don't know what, I know that they're constricted by the ingredients that they can get over here, certainly the water as well, but I do wonder, do these brewers, and especially the head brewers, do they compare their beers to German lagers? I mean, I'll give you an example, right? So I've been doing a lot of recording lately, and here's a little tip for you if you are into recording. What you'd normally do is, say you're mixing a song, you'd have a song that you really like, one that's always been mixed and mastered, one of your favourite songs, and you'd play that, and the song that you're listening to, you try and get it to sound like level-wise and stuff like that, and guitar sounds, bass sounds, drum sounds, etc. You'd listen to that and you'd try and get yours to sound as similar. And if you really do pay attention and you really know what you're doing, you can do that. Now, I know that's a bit of an ambiguous comparison, but I would love to see that with British brewers, where they would go have a fair old fucking whack of German beer, good quality German beer, be tasting it, taking notes, and doing their utmost to brew something that's just like that. I mean, if you had this and a Bavarian Helles, you could not compare the two. This is just completely different. This has got more of an earthy character, more of a, for want of a better word, a lack of the noble hop character, which is what makes, in my opinion, I mean there are other factors as well, but the noble hop character on German lagers, especially from Bavaria, is what makes them so good, and this doesn't have that at all. So I'd love to know what hops they're using in this. They don't have any mention of what the ingredients are, and that's a shame, because I imagine if they did, it would be, I mean, they say they use Pilsner malt in it, but I don't know what the German brewers use, but I don't think they would be using Pilsner malt. I imagine it'd be some kind of Munich malt and some other kind of caramel, maybe, if you're brewing a slightly darker coloured beer. But yeah, this really doesn't make much of an impression on me. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, and I'm probably being slightly generous with that, but it's not doing anything wrong. It's not doing anything to upset me, so I'm not going to completely pan it. It's an okay effort. If you want to really know what it tastes like, then have a bottle of Warsteiner, and it's a slightly lesser version of that. So that's what you're dealing with. And my mate Norby in Germany, he really doesn't like Warsteiner at all. He says it's a cheap beer, that one of the most popular beers, and it's not that good. So that's what you're dealing with. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Would I recommend it? If you see it, certainly if you're in Wales, you're probably going to see that, especially if you're up in North Wales and all that. Yeah, fill your boats, help out a local brewer. And if any of the Wrexham lager brewers are watching it, do yourself a favour, just try and get some noble hops in. I know it's expensive and all that, but it does make a difference. And if you're trying to compare your beers, which you say you're inspired by Bavarian brewers, just drink some of that beer and then try and get your beer as close as possible. Even if you have to go over and do a brewery tour and try and steal some of the yeast and bring it back. I know it's fucking industrial espionage, and I'm not encouraging that, but do it. Not really. Not really, that's going to get me into trouble. You didn't hear it here. Anyway, remember, beer is working class champagne.